Okay, so for the Faith and Science Project, I picked the verse from Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, and the verse says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing, and then soon the seventh day he had rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." So basically, I'm going to be talking about kind of the literal creationist theory versus the evolution theory. And so one of my sources says that the creationist theory are these beliefs that are based on a literal interpretation of the Genesis creation narrative, and basically a rejection of any scientific theory of evolution. And literal creationists believe that God created the earth in 7 days. Whereas the evolutionist theory says basically all life on earth is connected and related to each other, and that everything kind of happened through science and for a reason. So like something like the Big Bang kind of triggered this evolution of events to create the world. And basically this diversity of life is a product of modifications of populations by natural selection, where some traits were favored in an environment over others. That's basically from this scientist called Brian Richmond, who was explaining that. So recently I listened to a podcast where they kind of connected both the literal creation theory and the evolution theory. And they were talking about basically how it's kind of a metaphor almost for like the 7 days might be a metaphor for like a really long extended period of time. And I thought that was really interesting to think about, that like God might not have literally said that he created the world in 7 days. And it's really cool to think that we are a part of his good creation. And this guy, his name is Science Mike, he says that science doesn't necessarily line up with the order of things that were created. So he's a scientist, but he also is a Christian, and so he kind of explores the boundaries of religion and Christianity. And some of the things he said were really just like kind of like sparked some thoughts in me. He said something else about like maybe this isn't supposed to be literal, so he doesn't necessarily think that the earth was created in 7 days, and that like what was even like a day defined as, in the 7 days of creation. And then I found another article by him that said, but think of in the beginning from Genesis and the singularity of the Big Bang Theory. What do terms like being, will, or knowing mean against that backdrop? Do you have will without time? Even the word being is linked to a particular state and seems very limited compared to the tiny glimpse we see of our origins and the singularity. When trying to explain God, I feel great affinity with the mystics who refuse to describe divinity with words. The unchanging God makes more sense in physics than in creationism. I thought that was so interesting that, like, God was able to create science, when he created the world, and that, science doesn't even necessarily line up with the things that he did, but he still created the earth in like his own mysterious way, and like we as humans can't even comprehend that. And then the last article I found was from the New York Times, and it was about why science does not disprove God. And it basically just said that science and religion are two sides of the same deep human impulse to understand the world, to know our place in it, and to marvel at the wonder of life and the infinite cosmos we are surrounded by. Let's keep them that way and not let one attempt to usurp the role of the other. I thought that was a really good point to end on, that that God and that science are always going to be interconnected, and without God there wouldn't be science. And yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say.